Hi, beautiful ladies. Welcome to my YouTube channel. I'm Alana Palm, Christian trauma release and mind renewal specialist, and I help Christian women overcome overwhelm, fear, frustration, and trauma from a Christ-centered perspective. If this interests you, please continue watching.
Good morning. Good morning. Hello. So, today we're going to be talking about how to wake up joyful every morning. And, my ministry is called Wake Up Joyful. And there's a reason for it. And I'm going to share a little bit more about why I made that title and where that came from. And also just finding out more about what you want to know. Like, how do you struggle to wake up joyful? How do you struggle to wake up joyful? Bonnie asked a question, which was great. So we'll talk about that for sure, Bonnie. And, honestly, there are a lot of people who just struggle to wake up in the morning. They are tired, they're not motivated. It's not an exciting thing for them to do. They've got stuff going on, they've got kids, maybe just like calling their name in the morning or jumping into bed with them, and they're just like, oh, I just want to sleep longer. And so I think there are other people who just they get out of bed in the morning and they're not happy. They don't want to be up and at them. They don't like their job. They don't just have motivation in life. So we are talking about how we can wake up joyful every morning. And I'm going to start this morning by asking you a question. Why do you find it hard to wake up joyful? What's going on in your life that when you wake up in the morning, you're not feeling happy, you're not feeling joy, maybe you're not feeling peace. So I'd love for you to put that in the comments. How do you struggle to wake up joyful? So let's get started. So I'm going to share something this morning that I, it's interesting because I don't love to share it. I don't love sharing this part of my life because it was so traumatic and so difficult that I think I still like to just keep laying it down at the foot of the cross and asking God to just work through anything that's residual from it. But I think for the most part, I'm healed from it. And it was really, really dark for a while. And, honestly, I struggled to wake up joyful for a long time. It started when I was younger. I didn't like myself. Some of you know when I was 12, I was starting to plan my suicide. I discovered that I actually had control over my life and I could take my life if I wanted to. So I ended up planning my suicide. And when I was 16, I tried to commit suicide. I was just tired of living. I didn't enjoy waking up in the morning. I didn't feel like I had anything to live for, and I didn't feel like I was worth anything. I just didn't like who I was. And a lot of the words that were spoken over me when I was a child told me that I wasn't enough, that I shouldn't have been born. So I really took that on and believed it. And I thought it was truth until I tried to commit suicide at 16 and found out that it was a lie or many lies that had been spoken over me, which was actually really cool to find out that there actually was a different truth. That didn't have to be my truth. And so after I worked through some of that stuff, I grew up a little bit, went to school, went to teachers college, had a career, felt like things were going well. And then I got really into the New Age belief system. And with the New Age belief system, I just felt like I had found the answer to everything. I could control everything. I could almost be the god of my own world, right? If I thought positive thoughts, I would get positive in return. But if I didn't, I would get negative. So I thought, okay, well, this is easy. All I have to do is think positive all the time. And if I do, then things are going to work out fine. So I stood on that belief system for a number of years. I stood on that belief and I thought, wow, this is amazing. And then all of a sudden, tragedy struck. And I was teaching at a school, and my teaching partner was killed in a murder suicide. We shared a grade 6 class together. And she was a mentor to me. I loved her. She was amazing. And I felt like just broken inside. And not only was I broken up inside, another teacher at the school had been shot as well in the process. So these were the two closest people to me at the school. I was devastated. Then I had this grade 6 class that I was responsible to help move through the situation, which I was not prepared for. And that was the first time I realized that my theory about putting out positive and getting positive back, it didn't apply. I had been so positive, and then this happened, so it just didn't work. And I didn't understand what to do with it, but I went to this girl who I knew at my school who went to church. This teacher I worked with, didn't know her very well, but I said, can you please just take me to church? Because I don't know how to handle this. I'm broken up about this. And I was crying every day. I was managing grade 6s and trying to teach them. And then every time there'd be a break, like recess or lunch, I would just go in the bathroom and cry. I was so devastated. And this was 12 years ago, or 13 years ago now. And I ended up going to church the next week. I was sitting in church. I was just in a place of complete shock, and I had no idea what was going on. My whole worldview had been shattered, and I was grieving the loss of my teaching partner and friend and mentor, and dealing with these kids, and I was a mess. So I ended up going to this church for about 11 months, and then it clicked. It clicked. I heard my pastor talk about Jesus for the first time in a way I'd never heard before, and I gave my life to the Lord that day. That was November 2nd, 2008. I started going to the church December 16th, 2007. So almost a year after I started going. And it was beautiful. And that started a journey of healing for me. But fast forward, after, I'd gone through these amazing experiences of healing, God had done a lot in my life by the time I became a Christian, dealt with the forgiveness, dealt with all my past, so I thought, up to a certain point. And then I made a friend who was actually my vocal coach because I sang, and she was involved with this group that I thought sounded really intriguing, and she invited me out to the group. And it was a personal development group that sounded like it had made a huge difference in her life. And I thought, wow, yeah, I'm really interested in that. And I went into it, and something didn't feel right, but I didn't pay attention to it because I didn't have enough discernment. I didn't trust my gut enough. But my husband really wanted to continue on with it. And both of us were a little guilty at the time of, I thought I was really close to God. I thought I built my life on this firm foundation on the rock, but I'd actually built it on sand. And I had no idea that when the water came in, it would just wash it away. And that's what happened. My husband kind of pushed for us to go to the next level of this seminar company. And I was like, okay, I've got a lot of stuff going on. I had postpartum anxiety really badly. I knew a lot of stuff was coming up. So I thought, okay, if this is the answer and I can get healing here, that would be great. They were apparently a Christian company, a Christ-centered company. So I felt like they aligned, right? The guy who was hosting the first seminar was Christian, and we would talk about the Bible, and it was really interesting. So I felt like, okay, God had sent this into my life for a reason. And it seemed like so many things lined up, like God was kind of giving me the okay to go ahead. And so I did, and I went to the second seminar, and that's when I realized how profound this actually was, how much I loved the work and loved what they were teaching and could apply it in my life in a way that it just felt good. It felt like I could kind of incorporate it into the Christianity I knew, and it worked so well. But I didn't realize until I was in it for about a year and a half, and I invited a few friends out. They came to the first one, somewhat benign, right? The first one is pretty easygoing, but the second level is where it gets pretty crazy. So I went to the second level with them. Actually, I staffed. And when they went, they're very, very Christ-centered girls, really close friends. And I knew they were very focused on Jesus. And when they came, they both thought it was a cult. And I was like, no, this isn't a cult. This is great. This is like amazing. And I was shocked that they would think that. But because they thought that, I thought I needed to dive deeper into it. And this was after I'd been in the company for a year and a half. Well, these two girls came back from this week away, and they were traumatized by it. One of them is a teacher. She couldn't go to school for 2 weeks. She was just crying every day, totally traumatized. The other one, she couldn't speak to me for months because I was such a trigger for her. And I didn't understand it. I Like, how could they think this is a cult? My idea of a cult was, you go and you live on this compound and you wear robes and you chant all day, and it's crazy, right? People drink cyanide, like it's nuts. This was nothing like that. But I realized that I didn't actually know the definition of a cult. And as I started researching it and understanding what was happening to me, I realized that I was in a pretty bad spot. I had gotten close to the leader, who was a woman, and she took me under her wing and mentored me. And she was this really strong, amazing, kind of like a Joyce Meyer type of woman mixed with Beth Moore. Like, she was just amazing. But what I didn't realize she was doing was she was actually systematically stripping my identity away and breaking me down and building me back up. And I was in a very abusive situation with a very narcissistic person. And since I've gotten out, people that I was counseling with have mentioned things like sociopath, psychopath, narcissist, things like that. But again, I had no idea. I couldn't believe that this was actually even possible. How could this woman that I thought was so great actually end up being this person that was so awful in some ways? And so I really took some time to figure out what had happened to me. I was seeing 3 counselors at the same time. One was a deprogramming counselor. He basically helped me. He lived way over in Europe, and he helped me get to a point where I could see that maybe this was true. Maybe this was actually not what I thought it was. And I'm just making sure, because I feel like it's possible that. So that was a hard time in my life. I actually got out of the cult, which was super hard, like ridiculously hard. I let go of all the people that had been my community in that group. I let go of the people who had mentored me that I looked up to so much. I just let go of everything. And it was devastating for me. I had become almost addicted to it, to this group. It was like being addicted to drug or something like that, where I just couldn't, I just honestly, like, I can't describe it in words how awful it was. I was, one whole summer, 2018, the whole summer, I laid in my bed with the curtains drawn in the dark, with my beautiful swimming pool outside, sending my daughter off to daycare because I couldn't handle it. I didn't know what to do. I was in such confusion. I had no identity anymore. My identity had been totally stripped. And I didn't know who I was without the group, without this leader. I mean, anyone who's been involved in anything to do with a cult or anything, where you've maybe seen a movie about it or a show about it, like, you get sucked in. And I was sucked in. I just didn't know. And so I ended up going through a really difficult period of time. Very depressed, thought about taking my life. All of it came down to the fact that I didn't know who I was anymore. And it actually gave me a beautiful opportunity to create this ministry. This ministry came out of the pain of not knowing who I was. And therefore, now I help women expel the lies of the enemy, expel the lies that are in their mind and heart from other people in their life, those negative thoughts and feelings, stuff that goes all the way back. Like, I realized that my attachment to this leader was very similar to my attachment to my mother when I was young, very abusive, very manipulative, things like that. And not, sometimes people don't even realize what they're doing. Can't say if they did or they didn't, but at the time they were both very broken, and I just didn't see it because it felt familiar. And I think that's a pattern that a lot of us get into. We get into these abusive relationships and it becomes a pattern and we don't even realize why. And it gave me a beautiful opportunity to realize why, learn a lot about myself, get a lot of awareness, heal a lot of areas inside that were very broken, and start building my identity on the rock, on what God said about me, on who God was. And then trying to go through, what am I worth? If I'm not worth anything in this group, what am I worth now? And so I figured out my worthiness in Him, my identity in Him. I figured out how to love myself and experience His love in a whole new way, and then actually be able to love people in a healthy way without expectations, but just loving from a pure place inside me and just loving from the overflow. And figuring out my purpose, my God-given purpose, my God-given assignment and calling. And I've now lived that. But for a long time, I couldn't wake up joyful. So when I was naming this ministry, I wanted to help women literally wake up joyful, because I knew how much I struggled to wake up joyful and how awful it was. So I tell you this because for a few reasons, because I want you to know that if you're struggling right now and you're in a pit like I was, you're not alone. I get it. I can pretty much understand almost, I believe anything you come to me with, I could understand on some level because we all have sin in us. We all have brokenness in us. I made some choices that were not good at the time. I lost some friendships that I since gained back because they were in resistance to the group that I was in, and I just shut them out. But since have reconciled, which has been so beautiful. But I let go of a lot. God stripped all the stuff that wasn't good for me, He stripped away. And every moment of it was so painful. But He did it because He wanted me to eventually wake up joyful, being focused. Narcissistic abuse is something I am an amateur expert in now, absolutely. But I'm so thankful that God brought me through that difficult situation because it gave me the biggest opportunity for growth. And so, to get into our topic today, waking up joyful. How do you wake up joyful? Well, the first thing, and I'm going to speak from my own experience in this because really, I hope that this resonates with you. But if you're struggling to wake up joyful, what was it that you were doing before bed? What is going on before bed? Because she said she has trouble falling asleep at night, having a good sleep, and then she wakes up in the morning very tired. So what's going on before bed? What are you eating? What are you thinking about? What are you watching? What are you focusing on? All of those things. Because what we are focusing on before bed has a huge impact on our nighttime experience, right? Even our dreams, right? Sometimes what I look at before bed is the thing that shows up in my dreams. If I'm thinking about something before bed, it's the thing I'm thinking about when I wake up in the morning. And it will often wake me up at night if it's something that I'm stressed about. So, what is going on in your life that you might be stressed about? What's causing you turmoil? And how can you lay that down? Right? And I know you and I are working on this. But what is it that you can lay down at the foot of the cross because God wants you to rest? He wants you to experience His peace and His rest and His joy. He wants you to experience Him. So, yeah, so listening to God's affirmations before bed, Julie, or in the mornings, yeah, beautiful. And really focusing on Him, honestly, it all comes down to being able to rest is being able to be in Him more. Being able to let go of the fear and the worry and all the stuff and the way we want it to look, our expectations, all of those things. Now, that's not always easy. One thing that has helped me really wake up joyful in the morning is to have a purpose. Now, what is the worry? What is the fear? What is the thing that's keeping you up at night? What is bothering you so much? And how are you not choosing God above that thing? Because something's stressing you out. Something's worrying you. Something's bothering you. And I think this is for anyone who's struggling to sleep at night. There's a reason. We might be caught in fight or flight. We might be, or freeze. We might be in a place where we don't fully understand what's going on, that it's something that you're stressed about. Like, what is that thing and why are you holding on to it? Where can you allow God's power to overpower the fear or whatever you're holding on to around that thing? Okay, because letting go is huge. Sleep and rest a lot of it is letting go. Right? Just letting go and relaxing. Another thing that works for some people is to listen to a theta wave audio. It's just theta waves. It just helps you get to that place of deep, deep relaxation. So that's something else that's possible for you too, is just to put that on and listen to it and allow your body to relax. So there are a whole bunch of tools we can use, but ultimately it would come down to where are you and how can you choose God over whatever it is? How can you, even if you don't know what it is, how can you say, you know what, God, I'm choosing you in this moment. I'm choosing to let this go. Whatever it is, you know what it is, God, and I'm choosing to let it go. And release it from your soul, release it from your mind and heart, allow His Spirit to come in and overpower it. And then when you're sleeping at night too, maybe you can sort of think about what's going on at first. What am I afraid of? Ask yourself some questions, play detective, then go into this, letting go, letting God, and send me whatever comes up for you because I'd love to understand more about that. And so waking up joyful every day, one of the biggest things for me is actually knowing my purpose, knowing my calling, and knowing my assignment. So there's a difference between the three of them. So basically, do you know what your purpose is? I'd love to hear in the comments if you actually know what your purpose is. Because there's a very specific purpose for us as Christ followers. So there are actually three parts to it, which I'll explain in a minute. And then there's our calling. So our calling is a little bit different. And if you know the difference between purpose, calling, and assignment, put it in the comments because I'd love for you to share that too. And I'll unpack those as well. So what do you get up for? What's the reason you get up in the morning? What do you want to do with your life? What do you want to do for Christ? And I also teach my clients this, but we go into a lot of details about your life and what you've experienced and what God might be calling you to, what your specific assignment might be. So we go through all of that in the Set Free Academy as we go along in it. But sometimes it's really uncovering some of that stuff that's buried deep down in our subconscious that is impacting our ability to maybe really know. All right, so let me talk to you a little bit about purpose. So thank you, Kathy. Yeah, you know what you're gifted to do, but not sure if my purpose is the same thing. Great, so this will be a good topic. So your purpose is really, as a Christ follower, three things. Okay, so it's encapsulated in three things. The first one is to glorify God. The second one is to do good. And the third one is to really, the Great Commission, make disciples of all the nations. Okay, so that's our purpose. That's it. We have the same purpose as Christ followers as everyone else, right? You've got a God-given purpose. Then your calling is really, a more specific, reason why you specifically exist. So it refers to your gifts, your talents, and your abilities. So when you talked about, what you're gifted to do, Kathy, that's your calling. Right? Your calling is what you're gifted in specifically. So our purpose is the same. Calling is what you're gifted in, you're talented in, that kind of thing. And then your assignment, actually, while your purpose and your calling are usually unchanged, they might change a little. Your calling might change a little bit over time, but your purpose and your calling are usually unchanged. Your assignment is changing, maybe, more often than you realize, right? So your assignment is maybe what you're in that season, what you're doing, right? So it's really what you do with the gifts that you have. That's your assignment. So, if you're gifted at, say, artwork, you're an artist, you're really gifted at doing, say, graphic design and artwork, and that's your calling. Your assignment would be working as a graphic designer or working as an artist. And if you do that, how do you glorify God through that? Right? So when we have an assignment and we're a Christ follower, we can look at how we glorify God through our assignment. We don't really choose our purpose, our calling, or our assignments. However, what we do is we choose to partner with God. We choose to co-create with God in order to manifest those things on earth, right? Because other people who have a purpose, even though our purpose is to glorify God and spread his word and make disciples of all the nations, and that, some people don't believe that, right? So they don't co-create with God. They aren't partnering with God. But us, as Christ followers, we're partnering with God. And that means that we get to co-create with him. And we get to manifest what he has put in us, our gifts, our talents, our abilities, into the earth for him, into our unique assignment for him. So no matter what we're doing, no matter what our assignment is, we're still in our purpose. We're still in our calling. Our assignment is just kind of like goes like this, and it just gets more specific. Okay? So what do you have to get up for? What is your purpose? And write that down. If you haven't written that down and you want to remember it, you can write that down. Okay? And then what do you think you're called to? What are your unique gifts, talents, abilities, strengths? And then what is your assignment? What specifically does God want you to do with those gifts, talents, and strengths? Some people struggle to get out of bed in the morning because they go through chronic pain. And if that's you, and I know that's me, I have fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue, some of you know. And so when I get up in the morning, sometimes it's a little harder than other times because I sometimes feel like I got hit by a truck the day before. And then I think, okay, well, I'm in pain physically, but what is my purpose? How can I live that out through my unique calling, my unique gifts and talents? And then what is my assignment? So this morning, for example, I woke up and I knew my purpose, right? To make disciples of the nations, to spread the word of God, to glorify Him, right? Spread the good news, that kind of thing. My calling, my gifts and talents. Well, I mean, I know what my gifts and talents are. I'm not going to speak them out right now because, it sounds like I'm tooting my own horn if I do, but I feel like I know what God has gifted me with as far as gifts and talents. Now I actually can step into them and agree to them. For a long time I couldn't. And then my assignment. So let's just say my assignment right now is being on here live, sharing my testimony, sharing what God's done in my life, and sharing how, you can wake up more joyful every day. So that's kind of how it goes. So for you, when you wake up in the morning, if you want to wake up more joyful, wake up knowing your purpose, your calling, and your assignment. Because when you do, you have a reason to live. You have a reason for being here. And if you don't know your purpose, your calling, and your assignment, then we should unpack that together because we can, and you can write that in the comments, Alana, I don't know what they are. It's okay. Okay. So our purpose is the wider thing. Okay. It's the thing that we were born with, which is to glorify God, to do good for His kingdom, and to make disciples of all the nations. So if we want to look at scripture to support that, you can write this down if you want. So 1 Peter 2 verse 9, existing to glorify God. Ephesians 2:10 is doing good works. And Matthew 28:18 to 20 is about the Great Commission, making disciples of all the nations. Okay, so that's your purpose. Your calling is your gifts, your talents, and your ability. So why you specifically exist, right? Because our purpose is the same for everyone. But your calling, why do you specifically exist? What are your gifts, talents, and abilities that God has given you? Are you very loving? Are you a caregiver? Are you an encourager? Are you somebody who's really great at supporting others? Are you a prayer warrior? What are your gifts? And maybe you sing. Maybe you are great at getting people together in community. Like what are your gifts and talents? So that's different from your purpose. You can use it to glorify God and do good and make disciples of the nation, but it's not your actual purpose, right? So now it's your calling. So I hope that those two make sense, right? Then your assignment is how you use your gifts, talents, and abilities. So for you, Kathy, maybe it's at your workplace, right? So your purpose is to glorify God, do good, make disciples of the nations. Then your calling, you're talented in, encouraging people. You're very good at encouraging people. Then your assignment might be that you go to church and you become a part of the Connect team and you're greeting people and showing them where they can go. And you just saw, recently how your assignment specifically affected somebody, right? Your purpose is to glorify God, do good, and make disciples of the nations, right? Your calling, what you're gifted at, you're very grounded, you're very encouraging, you're very sweet, you care about others, you're very empathetic, that kind of thing, right? And you would know more than I do, I'm sure deep down, what do you believe your gifts and talents and things like that are? Then what do you do with that? You spend time with your grandkids, and your assignment in that moment is to, use your gifts of being grounded, being caring, encouraging, empathetic with your grandkids in that moment. Your assignment can change day to day. It can change hour to hour, right? Does this make sense? So hopefully, that you're catching it, because I know this is a bit of a tricky topic to understand. We don't often talk about the difference between the three, right? So hopefully that's helpful for you. And then, when you're in this space of waking up and your purpose, your calling, and your assignment, you wake up, maybe your first assignment in the morning is to wake up and be with your child. And your assignment is to love your child. And that's it, right? You use your gift of being encouraging and loving on your child. And that's your assignment for the first 15 minutes of your day. Then your assignment is to go to work. You go to work and now you show up in a way that you're using your gifts and talents, right? So really what it comes down to is choosing God before anything else, choosing God before the worries, the fears, the things that are bringing you down, the pain, everything, right? And for me, the only thing that got me up in the morning when I was struggling, when I got out of that group and I was in so much pain, what got me up in the morning was my assignment to be a mom to my daughter as best as I could. I wasn't very present at the time. My assignment was that. My assignment was also to figure out why I had gone through that situation. So I used my gifts, talents, and abilities of researching, of wanting to understand myself better, gain more awareness. And I wanted to use that, all of those things, to find out what had happened to me, find out what was going on deep down that caused me to get into that situation in the first place, heal those areas, and then it became helping others, right? So researching it, now I get to live out, a different, I still use the same gifts, talents, and abilities, but my assignment is different. And so that helped me wake up in the morning more joyful, was just to focus on God. What's God doing? What does he want me to do with this present situation I'm in? How is he going to bring good out of it? How can I get up and co-create with him so that the goodness does come out of it? How can I make disciples of the nations even though I'm struggling so much? And part of that was in the moment, like the fulcrum shifted, and I was in this place of, well, I'm making disciples of the nations by learning how I can make this some kind of a ministry that will help others, which it's now turned into. I couldn't have imagined this necessarily when I was going through that, but I did believe that God was good and that his character was good and that his promises were true and that he was going to protect me and provide for me and that he was going to show me what he wanted me to do and how I could impact others. And I believed it. And so believing God is huge, right? Allowing it to overcome all of the other stuff. There was a comment and I want to read it to you because I thought it was really good. She said, I felt like God was telling me just recently that if he's able to cause all things to work for the good of those who love him, as it says in Romans 8:28, what would happen if I started looking at the bad things in my life as areas when surrendered to God will become something he will make into good? What if she started looking at those bad things in her life as areas that God wanted to work together for good? A shift in perspective, right? To not worry or stress about those things that I would naturally cringe away from or avoid, but instead confidently wait in expectation that my God is going to make something good out of it. It would certainly make the suffering less painful or at least bearable, knowing something good is in the making. And this is huge, huge. Believing God, believing him. Right? When we're in resistance to him and we're focusing on the fear and the worry and what ifs, we're not really believing that his promises are true, that he's going to work everything together for good, that he is there protecting you, providing for you, right? So that's really important as well. And, if you wake up and you're home alone all day, okay, so right now in your life, you're home alone, you know your purpose, to glorify God, to do good, and to make disciples of all the nations. So, in your purpose, and that's the bottom layer, what's the next layer? What's your calling? I want you to write down your gifts, your talents, and abilities. Write down your purpose, write down your calling, what your gifts, talents, and your abilities are, and then write down what you believe your assignment is when you're at home alone during the day right now. What is he calling you to do with those gifts, talents, and abilities? Okay, so I also think this will help you when you get up in the morning, if you haven't had a good sleep. And it will also just like shift your mindset in general. If you know why you're here, what your calling is, what your assignment is. And the assignment can change during the day. You could have one assignment for 30 minutes and then it could be an assignment for an hour and it could be assignment for the other half of the day. An assignment could be making dinner for your family. An assignment could be, watering the plants and taking care of the plants in your house. Like it could be anything, right? It doesn't have to be something like super profound. It's just how are you using your gifts, talents, and abilities to glorify God, to do good, and to make disciples of all the nations. So yeah, and then that might not be yours, right? So you get to figure out, and I'll help you with this, what you feel, and write down your purpose, your calling, your assignment, and write down numerous assignments, right? So if you know that during a day you have numerous assignments, Maybe one of them is doing the Set Free Academy work, right? Where you sit down and you spend time focusing on that, because that will help you in doing everything else, living out your purpose and your calling, right? Because you're on a path of growth, which is amazing. God honors that, right? So, I hope that this was helpful. I know that, we all have specific situations where we might struggle to wake up joyful, and each one can be unique. And even though it all comes down to choosing God, and that will give us more joy, peace, and allow us to live with more fruit, right? Because He's the vine and we're the branch, and we bear good fruit when we're in Him, right? And so, if you know, though, that this is a struggle for you and you don't know how to wake up joyful, you don't really know what your purpose, calling, and assignment are, like you haven't grasped that fully, and you just don't wake up joyful, but you want to, and you're committed to starting the process of getting closer to God, waking up more joyful, standing in your true identity and worth in Christ so you can have more joy and peace and love in your life, then, I invite you to reach out to me, private message me, comment on here and say, I'd love to talk to you. If you want to go deeper into these things, I have a whole program, and many women in the group are in this program, a whole program around going deeper into an awareness of who you are in Him, of what might have stopped you in the past from living out your calling, your gifts and talents, really showing up in life. If you've lived in fear, if you've lived in a place where you haven't really known what God's calling you to do, you've gone through some trauma, maybe similar to me, you've gone through trauma that's taken you out of the game for a while and you just want to go deeper, the Set Free Academy is a great place to start. Actually, it's an even better place to finish, because most people who come into the Set Free Academy have already tried everything else. They've read the self-help books, they've gone to, church, listened to sermons, listened to worship music, like they've done all the things. They've even gone to counseling. I have one client who went to counseling for 20 years, and she came to me and she was like, oh, this is what I've been looking for, right? So it's almost like the last thing you do, the Set Free Academy. It's the thing that you've tried everything else and you're finally ready for the thing that's going to work, that's going to get you to go deeper than you ever have before. So if you think that might be for you and you're interested, then send me a message and let's chat about that, because that might be where God's leading you. Only you know. So maybe spend some time in prayer and reach out if you feel that this might be the next step on your journey with the Lord. So I am going to sign off for today, and it was so nice spending time with you, and thank you for allowing me to share a little bit of my heart with you and a little bit of my pain with you and what God's done. I mean, He's done so much. I could probably go on for days in what God has done in my life and how He's brought beauty from the ashes, how He's brought a message from my mess, a purpose from my pain, right? Like He has done this amazing work, and He always does. If He can bring me out of where I was, He can bring anyone out of the pit. Trust me, you have no idea. It was crazy. And I promise you, if you're feeling discouraged today, He wants to bring purpose out of your pain and a message from your mess. So, well, ladies, it has been a pleasure being with you this morning. Thanks for tuning in live. If you're watching the replay, just tag me if you want me to pay attention to a specific comment to make sure I get a notification. I love you all. Thank you again for being with me, and I look forward to being with you again very soon. Bye.
Thank you for watching. If you connected with this content and it helped you in some way, please like, subscribe, and share this video. Also, check the description below for special gifts just for you. See you in the next video.